Welcome. Bienvenidos to the HMBCC City Council meeting, Tuesday, October 15, 2024. Can we stand for the pledge? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
May I have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Brownstone.
Here.
Councilmember Penrose.
Here.
Councilmember Reddick.
Here.
Vice Mayor Rarbach.
Here.
Mayor Jimenez.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? We move on to our proclamations, presentations. Colleen.
Are you guys ready? So I'm here to talk about the wonderful Future Leaders Civics Academy that just finished up last week. This program, for those who don't know, it's a 4-session youth civics and leadership academy, and we aim to help educate the youth in Half Moon Bay about the inner workings of local government. We help them build personal and professional skills like public speaking, leadership skills, communication, adaptability, and it all culminates in a mock city council meeting. And so over those 4 sessions, they are working on a project that addresses a need for youth in the Half Moon Bay community. And then they present that project to a mock city council meeting. So they were all sitting very similarly to you all last week at the last session. And it's a great time. They're so smart, and I'm very excited for the future. And so I just want to let you all know that you are going to be and do so many things in this life, and we are very thankful that you let us be a part of this journey. So we're going to go ahead and read your names. I'm going to just do first names only, and then we're going to ask you to stand up over here, and then we are going to ask the council to move over there, and we're going to take some group photos. Sound good? And then you'll be free to go. Okay. Nope. Nope. So sorry. We had 25 students total, and some of them are unable to make it tonight. So, Kieran? Is Kieran here? No, Kieran. Aiden. I saw Aiden. Nice. Cheers? Yeah. Malia. Sophia with a PH. Julia. Caleb Eisen. No Amelia. Sorry. That was not meant to be in the microphone. Javier. Sophia with an F. Luca. Lily. Liam. Scarlett. Carson. Kaya. Shay. She was our mayor. Ben. Roden? No, Roden. Hendrik. And that is everyone who is here tonight. So let's give him one more round of applause. Oh. Is Henry here? Oh, Henry, sorry. Henry! Oh, Amelia came. We're going over here. So let's all take a look at our future leaders. And again, thank you all so much for participating in this program. And so now we're going to take a group family photo.
I just forwarded you the questions.
Okay, great.
All of a sudden, nobody's here.
I just want to say that it was actually an honor to be able to meet with the students, with the future leaders last week. And I was very impressed by their way of thinking, by their innovative ideas. They do pay attention to the community. And I hope to see them, get involved with the city government. And like I said, their ideas they presented to us, very impressive in the way they were able, to pretty much, the needs of the community, and being at that age, it's a bravo for the whole group. Very impressed. So, thank you to the future leaders, and thank you for the parents, to the parents for supporting them. So, looking forward to see them in our city government. Thank you. We move on to, and we have a presentation from the library. Annie, thank you.
Great, thank you so much for giving me the time to speak tonight. So good evening, Mayor Jimenez, City Council members, and city staff. I'm pleased to share the library's annual report for fiscal year 2023-2024. San Mateo County Library, okay, there we go. San Mateo County Libraries is proud to offer services that ignite growth and strengthen our community. First established as a county-free library in 1912, the Library Joint Powers Authority was formed in 1999. This year marks the 25th anniversary of the JPA. Our service area covers 351 square miles, made up of our 11 member cities and the unincorporated areas of the county. Our communities include a rich diversity of individuals that our services and collections embrace and support. Our talented staff and wonderful volunteers create a welcoming atmosphere that inspires community and includes all. San Mateo County Library's programs and collections are highly used. During the last fiscal year, 1.7 million library visitors during the year visited the libraries, up from 16%. 2.4 million items circulated, and that was a slight increase of 4%. Over 10,000 events were offered at our libraries, and that's 36% more programs and events than we offered last year. Thank you. So this year, our website visits increased by an impressive 51%, and Wi-Fi sessions were up by 14%. Our laptops and hotspots continue to be heavily used and well appreciated by our community, with both increasing by 40%. At the local level, Half Moon Bay Library had over 175,000 library visitors and circulated 250,000 items last fiscal year. We provided 60,000 digital downloads this past year, and our program attendance at Half Moon Bay reached over 20,000 people. Library staff are always heading out into the community, and last year we attended 246 community events and interacted with over 8,400 people. Libraries uplift their communities, and in turn, communities work to uplift their libraries. Let me take you through some of our accomplishments. This year, we began a robust process to update our strategic plan, working with local consultants. We held interviews and surveyed thousands of community members and key stakeholders online and in person at our libraries and throughout the county. We visited schools, laundromats, grocery stores, housing events to engage the community in meaningful discussions. These insights will shape our new strategic plan, guiding us in meeting community needs more effectively, refining our services, and setting ambitious future goals. We are proud to say that members surveyed gave San Mateo County Libraries a 98% favorability rating. Our wide range of tech services and wellness-centered programs, including computer access, weekly tech help, yoga, tai chi, and music programs, have become a favorite among seniors. We also offer services like the VA Mobile Clinic, Coastside Hope office hours, and social safety net services. Our libraries offer older adults the simple solace of a routine and provide a place for a meaningful social interactions, helping to prevent loneliness and enrich daily life. We're proud to host many online and in-person English language programs to support learners. With English classes, conversation clubs, book clubs, and more, our libraries have reached thousands of determined community members seeking to learn or improve their language skills. We are so grateful for our volunteers who drive these programs forward in collaboration with our staff. This year, we opened a 24/7 library outpost at the Pacifica Sanchez Library, a first of its kind for San Mateo County Libraries. This innovative service approach increases access to library materials. Featuring a lending machine with a curated collection of hundreds of books and media, this new library offering allows community members to browse, check out items, pick up holds, and return materials 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Plans are underway for additional library outposts to be installed throughout our service area. Our libraries stay bustling with frequent creative and fun offerings for community members to learn, experiment, and play. We started 2024 off by hosting workshops on Adobe Acrobat, Illustrator, Lightroom, Photoshop, and more. Gem painting, a relaxing activity that managed process-based art with mental wellness, debuted as a popular adult maker program this year. Karaoke machines and board games for checkout also continue to thrill and delight our communities with endless entertainment. And the imaginative Makermobile, ever on the move, saw another successful year of taking tech to the streets. When serious storms bring the unexpected, our libraries are destinations for support. We provide a place to recharge, access the internet, and reach much-needed resources. This year, we served as community resource centers following severe rain, winds, and power outages. In partnership with our member cities, the County Department of Emergency Services, Red Cross, and PG&E, we extended evening hours, Our libraries offered a safe and reliable place for people to stay warm, access snacks and water, charge devices, and gather themselves to regroup during the storms. Our impressive library champions shined bright last year. They took advantage of every opportunity to better our community libraries, providing exceptional customer service to our patrons. We're proud that 32% of staff speak another language, including Spanish, Cantonese, Mandarin, Russian, Tagalog, Hindi, and Tongan. Our volunteers, friends of the library groups, and foundation give us critical support throughout the year. 500 volunteers contributed over 25,000 hours to our success. I am extremely proud of our Half Moon Bay Library staff, in particular, the number of staff that live locally. I am particularly proud of Sabrina, who started as a library volunteer 12 years ago, volunteering with our youth services librarian. Sabrina was hired as a high school intern, then a library aide, then a library assistant, and then a community program specialist. Sabrina finished her master's degree in library sciences this summer and is now our youth services librarian, coming full circle. Thank you again for giving me the chance to share some of our most exciting accomplishments. We appreciate the strong support and partnership with the city, and thank you for working with us through another successful year. I'd now like to close the presentation with a short video where we hear directly from our community members.
I love the San Mateo County Library System because of the vast variety of programs and services that are offered, things that you'd never expect the library to offer. I love the library.
I love the library because it is a way for me to stay connected to my mom and dad who are deceased. My parents were both always avid readers and patrons of their local libraries. They raised my sisters and I to love reading and to respect and appreciate the services that a library provides to the community. This is one of the many special ways I like to stay connected with them. So thank you.
I really appreciate that you have a safe, warm place that I can just sit and read when I want to, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
I love the library because I find that I'm able to access books in such a special way, and I can find pretty much whatever book I want. And I always find something off my list that I want to read. I love the experience of reading books that have had a life well before me.
I like the library because you can use a makerspace to make 3D printing. You can use a Glowforge, and then you can do other things. I like that the staff is very kind and very helpful, so patient.
I love my library because they have wonderful bilingual resources, and I love the arts and crafts workshop.
I love my library because the staff are so friendly and helpful, and it's so pleasant to have people who want to help you find the books that you need or the ones that your children are interested in. So I'm so grateful for them. Lots of love.
We have the best library of any county in the United States. I love the San Mateo County Library System.
Thank you to city staff and the council for your partnership with us and for championing the library. In particular, Councilmember Penrose and City Manager Chittister for your work on the Library JPA Governing Board and Operations Committee. Thank you to the Friends of the Half Moon Bay Library for their steadfast support and advocacy, and thank you to library staff for their dedication and passionate work. And if you have any questions, I am here to answer them.
Questions, no? Comment, well, thank you. I know both my kids grew up in the public library in Half Moon Bay, and my daughter actually works during the summer at the library. So thank you. She's been a great experience for her to be there.
And we've loved having her.
Thank you, Annie.
It's a wonderful library, Annie, so thank you for everything that you and your staff do. It's really very remarkable. Thank you.
Thank you. Great. Well, thank you so much.
Good evening, Half Moon Bay City Council. Thanks for having me over again. That's a tough act to follow. Everyone loves the library. So I feel like this must be how it feels like to follow the Rolling Stones at Woodstock, but let me give you my quick update here. There's been a lot of concerns regarding lighting on the Mid-Coast, and we want to comply with the Dark Skies Initiative. So we had 2 agenda items at the last meeting regarding that. The first one was the school board attended our meeting so we could discuss lighting at the El Granada Elementary School. The second item was a letter was drafted and sent to the county regarding we would like to see an ordinance on the Mid-Coast regarding lighting. So in the future, developments will meet the Dark Skies Initiative. The next item I'd like to talk about is there was the Quarry Park Festival last weekend, and it was well attended, and I thought it was awesome. And I live right below Quarry Park, and I love Quarry Park, so I'm glad that exists. So I saw the first agenda item for you guys, and with young leadership people in Half Moon Bay, and I wish they were still here because, again, we're still looking for people. We're always looking for people to be on the Mid-Coast Community Council, and someday it would be great if they live between Miramar and Montera to join the Mid-Coast Community Council. So that's always available. So on a more serious note, there has been changes in the way we are financed through the county, and we're currently working through those details on that very emotional issue. So we did have a meeting regarding that last week, and we're waiting for more guidance with respect to how we'll be funded in the future. And that is my update. Thanks.
Thank you. Any questions? Nope. Thank you. Move on to mayor's announcements. This coming weekend, don't forget we have the Pumpkin Festival. October 19th, October 20th. Expect traffic. That's part of the show. And a lot of good food and good music. So I'll see you there. Also, one more thing, October 29th, 6 p.m. at the library, there's going to be a conversation about healthcare on the coast side. Not the library. It's at Oceano Hotel. It's going to be at the gatehouse at the Oceano Hotel, October 29th.
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock. And that's it for my announcements. We going to move on to reports from any closed sessions.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, community. Nothing to report out from closed session. The Council has not met in closed session since the last time we met. Thank you.
Thank you. City Manager updates.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We just have one update tonight from Julissa Acosta.
Good evening, Council, community. I am happy to announce and invite the community to an immigration workshop that we'll be hosting in partnership with COSI Hope. This is brought to the community thanks to the United Coalition for Immigrant Services. It's an organization that provides free or low-cost immigration services to children and families in San Mateo and Santa Clara County. The workshop will be presented in 2 different sessions. The morning session consists of just an informational session. It's about knowing your rights and policy updates. And then after lunch, starting at 12 p.m., we will be providing one-on-one consultations, 30-minute consultations to those who sign up ahead of time. We have about 40 slots available, and they're free. So folks, you can go to the next slide, please. Folks can sign up directly with me or Judith, and my contact information is there. We'll be announcing this through our e-news every week, so folks are aware, and we'll be sharing it through our media channels. Any questions?
No question. No.
Right.
Thank you for the update.
And I'm not going to make the announcement I said I was because I don't want to steal someone else's thunder on public comment. So it's coming.
Thank you. We went to a public forum. We have Patrick Johnson.
Is it on? Patrick Johnson, 431 Kehoe. I've got some photos that I took of the riparian area that I was proud of at one point as a planning commissioner because we helped design the pathway that's under the bridge there and goes out to where Tom and Pete's is and all that area. And we did a little educational kiosk or whatever you want to call it, talks about the riparian area and what's in there, red-legged frogs and San Francisco gardener snake and steelhead apparently, and lots of birds. And there was a nice little sign there. It was all broken down, spray painted. I was just like kind of blown away with that. And we took a walk with my wife one time, and under the bridge, my wife said, I don't ever want to come back here again because of the unhoused that was there, and they were pretty much ruling the area and made it very unsafe. And here we're talking about going, bike paths and walking in walkable cities. We need to have a city that's safe and walkable without being scared. As I was interviewing some people over by Safeway, that's where I started my journey. And I went all the way up to behind the post office. Within that area from A to B, they've used tools to hack out holes, and they have campsites, and they have fire pits, they have axes, they have branch cutters, they've cut branches down. They've got bridges in there that they built. They got swings in there that they built. Bicycles, clothing, bags definitely used for drugs because they're small bags. Not to say I'm a drug user, but I know what, watch a lot of TV, you can see it. And I was shocked with everything that I saw. And spray painting on the willow trees, and actually attempted to cut down one of the largest willow trees right by the Pilarcitos Creek. And it was shocking to me because it clearly states riparian area and not to be used and not to be camping, trespassing, and all the things that you see on the signs. And they actually put stickers over the phone numbers so you can't call the sheriff. So these are all things that are not in the land use plan, and we need to protect our environment. That's what we're here to do. We're supposed to be good stewards. That's why people come to Half Moon Bay. We definitely need to have a plan to clean it up, make our place safe, and for everyone to enjoy that are visiting and the people that live here. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Next, Martin Anaya.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council and staff. I am Martin Anaya with Pacific Coast TV. A couple of quick announcements for you all. PCT will be covering that October 29th community event, so we'll be there for that. And we'll also be covering the Pumpkin Festival this weekend, live both days. We're going to be right in front of the Zabala House where we always are. So I want to invite you all to come down and get an interview or bring somebody down that you think needs to be interviewed, because we want to show what everybody's doing and all the wonderful things that are going on this weekend. So that's happening this weekend. I'm very excited about that. It's pretty much the highlight of my year, so I'm pretty excited. Want to tell you real quickly, last week, a couple of weeks ago now, there was a listening session by the Public Utilities Commission about cable television. And they were listening to customer feedback about cable. One of the things, and I know that the city clerk has been getting calls from a few people, is that people are having a hard time finding PCT, right? So we're supposed to be on channel 27 coast side. I'm not going to go into the whole panoply of issues, but bottom line is you have a little cable box that literally gets everything. It's how they program that box that determines whether or not an individual in Kenyatta Cove or on Main Street is going to get channel 27. But more importantly, and beyond that, even when they can get 27, as you know, the signal is really substandard because it's what they call a standard definition signal. So a lot of people from this community, a lot of people from the Mid-Coast Council, And up and down the coast side, we had about 12 people that spoke to this issue that said we need to be on HD so that for no other reason you can see the presentations when you're looking at the fine print and not have to go to the internet for those people that are paying for cable. And you have to understand that a lot of what we do on the internet is subsidized by those cable subscribers through their PEG fees and through the fees that they give to the cable company that then get passed through to the cities. So that's something that's very important. We want to thank everybody that participated. We'll be following up with the city manager to see if we can get a letter that could go to Comcast that would basically, or that could go to the PUC, in fact, that would basically say, hey, listen, we want to see our community channel and we want to see it in the highest definition possible, which is where every other channel is. There's really no reason for us to do this way except for, wanting to diminish community voices and the like. So we're not happy about it, but we did finally get a chance to talk to the PUC about it. Last thing, and I'm very excited about this, as you all know, for about 30 years now, we've been doing a little thing called PCT Honors. And a couple of the esteemed panelists here today have been a recipient of a PCT honor. This is something that allows us to bring the coast side together and to show people from both sides of the slide what a wonderful community that we have up and down this coast side. And I'm very excited because two of the honorees for this year's PCT honors, one of them is actually in the room here. Where is she? There's Chrysalyn over there from the Half Moon Bay Chamber of Commerce, who will be honored this year. And one of the other honorees I'm very excited is our own supervisor, Ray Mueller, who has been just a stalwart supporter of PCT and so many other things in the couple of years that he's been in office. So we're very, very excited. That is going to be happening next month on the 16th. You can watch it live on Channel 27. Throughout the coast side and throughout the world on pacificcoast.tv. I'll have some flyers by the next meeting. I do appreciate you guys for tuning in and for supporting PCT. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next, our Crystalline.
What if I just did an acceptance speech just right here? Thank you. Crystal Lynn with the Coastside Chamber. So honored to be an honoree. Thank you very much. Main reason, candidate forum. So everybody is well aware that we have an election coming up in, I don't know, like 21 and a half days. And tomorrow night at the most awesomest library from 6 o'clock until 8:30, we are going to have the Half Moon Bay City Council Forum, and then we're going to have the Cabrillo Unified School District Forum. It's going to be moderated by the League of Women Voters, so it's all going to be very nice and civilized and cool, and we appreciate that all 8 candidates have RSVP. Thank you very much. So if you have questions for the candidates, you can come and have them answered. You can submit them tonight online at coastside365.com. And please come to the library tomorrow at 6. Thank you. And it'll be on PCTV.
Thank you, thank you. David Shore.
Good evening, and yeah, we actually do live in a wonderful community, as the gentleman from PCTV said, so it's a pleasure to live here. There are things we have to work on, but that's the way it goes. You guys have a fairly thorny appeal to deal with on your agenda tonight, but once you've dealt with that, you're going to be turning your attention to the Hyatt project, because no matter what happens at Planning Commission, it will be coming to you at City Council. And something that Patrick said actually is very relevant, the LUP, the land use plan, which governs development in this community, and how important it is to adhere to that. In fact, the decision about the Hyatt is not a hard one. You actually have almost zero discretion. You must deny the permit as proposed. Here's why. Section 1-3 of the LUP mandates that a CDP shall not be issued unless the project complies with all relevant portions of the LUP. The EIR on the Hyatt, deficient though it is and shoddy though it is, finds 3 sections of Chapter 9 of the LUP where the Hyatt is not in compliance. In fact, plain reading of the text says there are 6 sections of Chapter 9 of the LUP where the Hyatt is not compliant. Therefore, if you cannot issue a EDP, if it is not compliant with the LUP, it's really a done deal. There's no discretion, there's no wiggle room. That's just the way it goes. So hopefully you can not waste a lot of time with it and just use normal procedural grounds and tell the applicant that he can come back with a smaller compliant project and it will go through without a problem. But that means your attorneys will probably jump up and down and say that puts you at risk of a takings. It's not takings. We're not telling him he can't develop the property. He just has to come back with a project that is compliant with the existing and certified LUP. If I have another second or two, in the election that was referenced that's coming up, the budget is going to be a big issue and how the council handles and manages the budget. Just to frame that, the city's revenues, both in general and total revenues, are higher than they've ever been. You guys don't have a revenue problem. You have a spending problem. In the warrants, which you are probably going to approve by consent and not look at in detail for the month of July, or is it August? The August warrants are up for approval today. For example, your legal costs were $184,000 in August. They were $284,000 in July. They were $272,000 in April. This is well over 10% of your operating budget. Something is not right. That's where you should start looking to balance your budget. Look at your expenditure side. Thank you.
Thank you. Move on to our consent calendar.
We have online speakers. Our first speaker is Rocio Avila.
Hola, buenas noches.
Hola, Rocío, habla Víctor.
Sí, está bien.
Ya sabes
Víctor.
cómo le hacemos.
Ujú.
Adelante, por favor.
Buenas noches a todos. Mi nombre es Rocio Ávila,
So, good evening, everyone. My name is Rocío Ávila,
miembro del Comité de Viviendas Justas.
member of Just Housing.
El comité está preocupado por el desinterés que se ve en la creación de vivienda asequible para la comunidad.
So, the committee is worried about affordable housing within the community.
En primer lugar, hay un rechazo visible a los proyectos encaminados por parte del sector social de Half Moon Bay.
So, first off, there is a refusal for different housing proposals here in Half Moon Bay.
En segundo lugar, hay un bajón en el entendimiento sobre la urgencia de construir vivienda asequible.
Also, secondly, there's no understanding as far as like building affordable housing.
La tragedia que se vivió en el campo en enero del 2023
So the tragedy that occurred on January 23rd
fue originada por las condiciones de vida a que los campesinos están expuestos.
was started because of the conditions that the farm workers were exposed to.
Eso nos recuerda que las condiciones de vida esenciales para la salud mental y la seguridad de todos.
This is a reminder that it is essential for people's mental health state to reassure that.
Los elementos que forzaron a alguien a perder la cabeza y a otros a no tener un lugar seguro para protegerse
So these are the things that enabled a person to kind of lose their head and not be able to protect themselves.
está muy relacionado con la crisis en general de no tener acceso a una vivienda digna.
Is directly related to the crisis where somebody doesn't have affordable housing.
Se habla mucho de que Half Moon Bay es una comunidad que quiere viviendas para todos.
There's a lot of talk about Half Moon Bay having housing for everyone,
Pero eso no es evidente con las acciones que se están llevando a cabo.
but that isn't evident with everything that's happening.
El lenguaje pro vivienda es una máscara para cubrir la discriminación de muchos miembros de la comunidad.
So the language used is basically a mask that's used for discriminating people against people in the community,
que sí tienen un lugar digno para vivir.
that they should have a dignified place to live.
¿Qué han hecho ellos para demostrar que sí quieren viviendas para todos?
They've also demonstrated that they want housing for all.
No hay evidencia práctica que les interese el bienestar de los demás.
¿Puedo repetir eso, Rocío, por favor?
No hay evidencia práctica de que les interese el bienestar de los demás.
There is no practical evidence that demonstrates that you are interested in the rest.
Espero que estemos equivocados. Perdón.
Sorry.
No, perdón.
Sorry.
Es que lo tenía escrito. Sino que hay evidencia de acciones que nosotros lo interpretamos como racismo y opresión.
However, there is evidence in a way that we interpret it as racism and oppression.
Espero que estemos equivocados y que la comunidad sea una voz para la construcción de viviendas dignas para todas.
I hope we're wrong and that the community does offer up dignified housing for all.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Gracias, Rocío.
Next, we have Paul Nagengast.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, City Council members, and Half Moon Bay community. My name is Paul Nagengast. I live at 229 Valdez Avenue in District 3, and I am a candidate for City Council in District 3. I wanted to take this time to thank the many people I have met on my door-to-door journey in District 3 whom spent their time to voice their concerns to me. And if I haven't knocked on your door yet in this district, I am still on the way. I wanted to add, as the son of an immigrant and with other immigrants in our household, I want to encourage all to fill out your ballots and exercise your right to vote. And please submit prior to the mail-in deadlines or drop your ballot in the closest ballot drop-off locations. Thank you for this time for me to remind folks to vote.
Thank you, Paul.
No more public comments.
Thank you. Move on to the consent calendar. Let's pull any of the items. No? May I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I move that we approve the consent calendar, including items 1A, accepting warrants for the month of August 2024. Item 1B, accept the required communications and memorandum of internal control reports from the fiscal year 2022 through 23, independent auditor. And that's it.
Second.
Can I have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Brownstone?
Yes.
Councilmember Penrose?
Yes.
Councilmember Reddick?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Rarbach?
Yes.
And Mayor Jimenez?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, we move on to our ordinance and our public hearings.
Yes, I will provide a little overview on this item, but I did just want to note that Councilmember Brownstone is recused on this item. He is within the 500 to 1,000 feet sort of radius of the project site, and under the Political Reform Act and the rules of the FPPC, there is a requirement to recuse when you're in that zone. So, Councilmember Brownstone will find you when we're done. All right. So planning staff will provide the staff report for this, but I did want to, for the council and for the community, just provides the sort of the procedures for this item. It's a land use appeal, so the council rules of procedure have just slightly different process to ensure due process and to ensure that the appellant and applicant has adequate time to be heard. So the way this will proceed will be that the first order of business will be that the council will disclose any ex parte communications. Then there'll be a staff presentation. And after the staff presentation, the appellant, who is also the applicant, will have up to 10 minutes to present and may hold any of that time for rebuttal if you'd like. After the applicant / appellant's presentation, there will be a public hearing with public comments, typically 3 minutes per speaker. And then at that time, the public hearing will be closed, and the applicant will have time for rebuttal if it's reserved. And then there will be council deliberation and a vote. So that's sort of the order of proceedings. And at this point, if the council has any questions about the process, I'm happy to answer those. Otherwise, I would suggest that the mayor ask your colleagues whether anyone has any ex parte communications to disclose before the staff presentation begins.
Council members, do you have any ex parte communications with the appellant?
I've been approached by both sides. I have met with nobody, so that's my report.
I had a telephone conversation with Mark Massara.
I met with Brad Steinwade, who is a neighbor to the project site, and I also had a meeting with Mark Massara, the agent for the applicant, and I made a personal site visit on my own to evaluate the site, take a look at the elevations and the location and the context.
I had a meeting with Brad Steinwade and saw images of the site, and that was it.
Great. Next up will be the staff presentation.
Thank you, Mayor Jimenez and members of the City Council. I'm Scott Phillips, Senior Planner in Community Development. I'll be presenting the project tonight. So the project includes a single-family residence at 2800 Champs-Élysées Boulevard, sort of on the north side of town within Miramar. And the site is zoned planned unit development and subject to the Stolosky-Gonzalez specific plan, which allows for single-family residence. The site slopes gradually from the high point along the cul-de-sac at 38 feet and a low point of 30 feet above sea level, sort of on the western, narrower portion of the property there in green. And the Pullman Watercourse runs along the northern property line just outside of the subject property. Now, as I mentioned, the scope of the project includes the construction of a two-story residence with a two-car garage attached by a covered breezeway. And the permits requested include a coastal development permit and architectural review. Now, the project has been reviewed by the Planning Commission now 5 times. It's gone to the Planning Commission 5 times. Once in 2018, 2019, and then again in 2020. And then substantial revisions took place to the project before presenting it once again to the Planning Commission in 2023. Now, the 2023 meeting, it really centered on concerns regarding drainage and potential flooding related to the project. And the commission also expressed concerns about project conformance with local coastal land use plan policies. Now, preliminary grading and drainage plans were updated and peer-reviewed by a consultant selected by the city, and further policy analysis was conducted before presenting the project once again to the Planning Commission last month. Now, the Planning Commission reviewed the submitted materials and ultimately denied the project on a 3-0 vote with 2 Planning Commissioners absent. The Planning Commission's decision was appealed shortly afterwards by the applicant, and the meeting was scheduled for this evening. Now, separate from the project, there's been quite a bit of flooding and stormwater comments received by city staff, not only at the Planning Commission meetings, but at City Hall. And our Public Works Director, City Engineer Maz, would like to give a little update on watercourse management within the vicinity.
Thank you, Scott. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, and public, Maz Virginia, Public Works Director, City Engineer. We just, over the last couple of years, we've heard concerns with respect to the Pullman watercourse and concerns with flooding and erosion and sediment transport. And as part of those efforts, the city started looking at the watershed as a whole. We are still in the process of putting together our hydraulic analysis of the Pullman watercourse based on the watershed area itself, and to take a closer look at the flows that are going through Pullman at different design storms, and really with the long-term goal of creating a solution, permanent solution for the neighborhood and all the users neighboring the watercourse itself. So just wanted to share some slides with respect to what we've looked at so far. We are still in the process of finalizing that hydraulic analysis, and we'll be bringing that back to the community for an update on that in a future meeting. So what we have, just wanted to share briefly what we have so far to date. And again, this is a draft in process. But what you're looking at here is the existing condition of the Pullman watercourse, modeled based on a 10-year design storm. And you can see here the different shading, and the numbers represent the amount of cubic feet of water per second that is anticipated under the models. And then the colors are representative of the amount of the depth of flooding based on those, based on the area. So as you get to the grayer, it's closer to 0, and as you get to the red, you're looking at 5 feet. And so this is on the 100-year. You can see on the east side of Highway 1, that is the Rocket Farms area. And the modeling shows that there's quite a bit of ponding that happens in that location. And as you follow the Pullman watercourse along the boundary, you can see where some of the areas of green and orange pop up. And basically, this is indicative of what has been shown to the city and planning commission and staff over the last couple of years from the residents. The issue there is an existing concern and issue out there, and this modeling just shows that is accurate, what we've been witnessing over there. Next slide, please. With that, so one other slide that we wanted to share as we work through this, finalizing this document for public review, for public presentation. We also looked at a 100-year event and what that looks like. And so you can see, again, a lot of the same areas are still impacted by the stormwater, the increase in flows. You can see where the flows impact some of the surrounding neighborhoods. And I think, again, this is just very clear indication and validation of what has been visually shared with the city and staff over the last several years. Long term, what we are looking at is utilizing this modeling information to come up with really a permanent solution. And there's different opportunities here as far as how that looks. There's some potential easement area from the applicant that would help us with obtaining that permanent solution by providing additional areas for the stormwater to be able to disperse and infiltrate during certain conditions. And so this is something that we'll be looking at long term. The other component to this, and this is something that we'll talk more about when we come back for that assessment, to present that assessment, is the funding necessary to do these improvements, not just the improvements themselves, but also the maintenance of it long term. Because it'll be a two-pronged approach. It'll be the improvements will be key, obviously, but also ongoing maintenance to address some of the culverts that are existing currently, and as well as making sure that the water course and any other facilities that are added to supplement the flows are maintained and adequate for the flows that are going to be there. And they're ultimately there are components of this water course that are within private property. There are some city-owned parcels, and so ultimately the funding mechanism there's a high likelihood that we'll be looking at an assessment district formation as far as addressing this long term. So I just wanted to provide that brief update on that, and I'll turn it back over to Scott.
Thanks, Maz, and we'll sort of transition back to the proposed project. And this slide includes the site plan that shows the location of the proposed home. And you'll notice that sort of the red line there indicates the building envelope that's included in the Stolowski-Gonzalez specific plan. And you'll notice that the house and the garage are pushed as far east as possible, sort of to the higher point of the site. So this slide shows the grading and drainage plan I tried to highlight the proposed detention basin in blue. And substantial revisions have taken place over time to the grading and drainage plan. So I'll go into that a little bit more later in the presentation. A detailed landscape plan was also prepared by a landscape architect. And this will be updated as changes take place to the grading and drainage plan. So just a brief overview on the floor plan. It's a reverse floor plan with all the bedrooms on the lower floor, as well as the garage, and then stairway within the breezeway that provides access to the primary living space on the second floor. And then here's the second floor, that sort of a multi-purpose room, as well as covered deck on the back and media room. The roof plan, the vertical lines there indicate the higher shed roof that would include standing seam metal. And then the dished areas are where the solar systems would be installed. And then the proposed east elevation, this is the view from Champs-Élysées cul-de-sac, sort of facing east. The main entrance through the breezeway there, as well as the garage and a little balcony that faces Champs-Élysées. And then opposite that side of the house, the west elevation, this would face the coastal trail and the state park. Sort of the covered deck off the second story is shown there too, with the sliding glass doors. And then the south elevation facing Young Avenue, a variety of materials are included in the home design. And then last but not least, the north elevation that would face the Miramar neighborhood. Again, quite a variety of exterior materials. And then several color renderings are also included in the plan set, showing the colors of the proposed home, sort of a muted earth-toned. The wood siding would be untreated and gray over time. And then this shows the covered breezeway, sort of in between the main house and then the garage. Now, as I mentioned previously, there's been a lot of sort of revisions that have taken place to the grading and drainage design. Direction was given at the the Planning Commission meeting in 2023 to look into the applicability of exceeding the normal 10-year, 2-hour duration stormwater detention requirement. And we explained that to the applicant. They came back with 3 different stormwater containment options. And the city hired Waterways Consulting Incorporated to peer review the 3 different stormwater detention options. And in conclusion, along with some feedback from the Planning Commission as well as the city engineer, the 25-year stormwater detention option was selected. Now, also attachment 2 of the staff report included the resolution for approval, includes a condition of approval requiring hydrological modeling specific to the site. So this is one of the recommendations from the peer review consultant from Waterways Consulting, that specific hydrological modeling is needed prior to building permit issuance to make for certain that not only the stormwater created from the project would be contained on site, but also that there wouldn't be any adverse impacts on any of the surrounding properties. And this is this slide shows sort of the eastern portion of the stormwater detention. Sort of the broken lines would collect the rainwater from the house, gutters and other impervious surfaces, direct them into a dry well, and then on to the detention basin further west. And then this slide just shows the western portion of the detention basin. Now, at the Planning Commission meeting last month, there was a substantial amount of discussion related to conformance with land use plan policies, specifically in Chapter 7. And, all of these policies, as well as others, were evaluated. And the conclusion was that the Planning Commission had quite a bit of concern that with policy 7-51, that they didn't feel that there was enough evidence to show conformance, project conformance with policy 7-51. Similarly, 7-57, flood protection evaluation. The Planning Commission really didn't feel that there was enough evidence in the record to show conformance with this policy. And they ultimately denied the project based off of non-conformance with these 2 policies. And the resolution for denial was included in the staff report. Now, shortly after the denial, an application for appeal was filed. And that also was included in attached to the staff report, attachment 6. And the staff report provided analysis on each of the grounds for appeal. Now, this slide summarizes the grounds for appeal. And as I mentioned earlier, part of the ground was that the appellant did feel that there was enough evidence to approve the project, whereas the Planning Commission, as I mentioned on the previous slides, did not see that there was evidence in the record to show conformance with the 2 policies. Now, figure 7-1 in our land use plan identifies areas of the city that are subject to sea level rise, as well as 100-year flood zones and tsunami inundation zones. And the first 2 are not applicable to the site. The site's far enough away from potential sea level rise to not be a concern. And then 100-year flood zones, it's not identified, it's not within a mapped flood zone. The site is within a tsunami inundation zone, and we are recommending a condition of approval that would require a disclosure to be recorded against the property to identify the site as within a tsunami inundation zone. Now, one other point of the appeal was that recently there was a state law that was passed that limits the amount of hearings that can take place on residences for discretionary review. The meeting tonight would be considered the 6th meeting, even though we have held 8 related to this project review. And Catherine might be able to go into a little more later, but basically that means that the City Council does not have the option of continuing this item, that a decision would need to be made this evening. Now, the next slide, I'll kind of go into more detail about the land use plan buffer related to coastal bluffs and cliffs. So you may have noticed in the staff report, I included this map that shows the subject property in green, as well as a 300-foot buffer. Now, we do have certain policies, particularly 7-1, hazard avoidance, as well as 7-12, site-specific shoreline hazard evaluation, that requires an in-depth look at proposed development that's within 300 feet of a shoreline hazard. Now, at the Planning Commission meeting, there was substantial discussion about whether or not this site was within 300 feet of a bluff edge or sea cliff. And we did quite a bit of research. We looked at our land use plan maps and determined that it's fairly, it's well away from the 300-foot mark. And what we did is we tried to show that on this map. The inland beach edge, as well as the sea cliffs, the closest sea cliffs to the site. And as you can see, they're much further away than 300 feet. Now, the closest terrestrial feature to the site would be dunes habitat, which does have a buffer of 100 feet. So the site is outside of any dunes habitat buffer as well. Now, as leading up to the meeting tonight, the site was posted to advertise this item on the City Council's agenda. We also sent out notices to interested parties, as well as residents and homeowners within 300 feet of the site. We published a legal notice in the San Mateo Daily Journal. And we received a couple of letters from residents, which we attached to the staff report, attachment 8. And then we also distributed a memorandum providing some answers to questions that were sent in, right around the time the staff report was published. Now, a couple of recommendations for the Planning Commission. One of the recommendations would be to deny the appeal and affirm the Planning Commission's decision, which is we've provided a draft resolution in attachment 1. Or the other option would be to grant the appeal and reverse the Planning Commission's decision based off of the evidence and findings contained in Exhibit A of Attachment 2. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we have conditions of approval included with Attachment 2 as well. And then just a couple of recommendations on meeting format. Catherine touched upon this earlier. Public comment, City Council clarifying questions, and then we can provide some responses. And I'm happy to, that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
So the next, you could take clarifying questions now if you have any for staff. Otherwise, this would be the time for the appellant to speak up to 10 minutes.
Councilmembers, do you have any questions for staff?
Scott, when was the hydrological study done? Was it done in the wet or the dry period of the season?
So maybe I'll ask Moz for a little support, but just to clarify, the hydrological study that you're referencing is the watershed study that Moz mentioned. Yeah, maybe.
So that was a modeling effort. So for that study, we took topographic information and put that into a model and utilized those modeling outputs to come up with that map for 10-year and 100-year storm. If you're referencing the studies that were done for the project itself, like the percolation tests and some of that geotechnical work, those were done in the drier months.
Do you have an explanation why it was done only in the drier months?
No, I think the appellant can speak to that a little bit, but I will mention that the geotechnical engineer and geologists on for the applicant, although they did it during the dry seasons, they do have a good amount of experience and background in the types of soils and things that are going on out there. So their recommendation was based off of their understanding of the soil structure and everything. But I think the appellant may be able to speak a little bit more to the specifics of that.
Thank you, Moz.
Do we have any more clarifying questions? No? No more questions?
Honorable Mayor, in light of the long history and complexities involved in this, I'll request 20 minutes for the initial presentation, and that will give me a few minutes to be able to do rebuttal. I had no idea we were going to try to limit to 10 minutes. I've got 30 minutes of opposition behind me, and the staff just took 20 minutes.
I would defer to the mayor in terms of giving extra time. It's 10 minutes in your council rules of procedure. That's why our standard is 10 minutes. I will say we've had several appeals this year. There have been a few occasions where you've allowed up to 15 minutes.
We're still going to do the 10 minutes, and you have 10 minutes to present your appeal.
That's really unfortunate, but I'll try to make do. Honorable Mayor, members of the council, I'm Mark Massara. I'm a resident of Miramar. I am the appellant, and I represent the property owner at 2800. This is an appeal of Planning Commission denial for a house that's 100% consistent with all city policies and regulations, as well as development conditions associated with the approved Stolosky subdivision. We've collaborated closely with your staff and peer review consultants and provided all requested information and reports and have accepted all suggested modifications and conditions for approval and seek no variances, no exceptions, or other accommodations. We ask only to be able to rely on substantial evidence in the record, many thousands of pages of scientific and hydrologic study to be able to build a modest house on a very large lot. As I said, we've worked closely now with your staff over many years and now 8 separate public hearings and have evaluated and proposed an unprecedented number of alternatives related to stormwater collection and treatment that are not only groundbreaking in Miramar, but would set new standards for the entire city. Staff has recommended approval at every single hearing going back to 2018. Tonight, we're focused on 2 LUP flood policies, 7-51 and 7-57. And we have provided the very analysis sought and received and evaluated by staff following the July 2023 Planning Commission hearing. 751 and 757 are contained within the flood hazards section of the LUP, which references Figure 7.6 flood hazards map, which staff has not shown you. Importantly, 2800 is not identified as being within the 100-year flood mapped area, which was shown on the map that Oz just set forth. Heck, our property's not even in the 500-year mapped flood area. In fact, the building site and natural grade of 2800 is approximately 6 feet higher than the neighboring properties that have experienced flooding in the past. And historic pictures, many hundreds of pages that are included in your staff report tonight from historic hydrologic and environmental and engineering analysis of the site, soils testing, and an abundance of science information shows that this natural grade is apparent and has not been modified as alleged by project opponents. Despite this and an abundance of caution, we've worked carefully with your staff and outside peer review experts and have funded those experts now for years to assure compliance with all LUP policies. 751 and 757 simply require that new development not cause flooding and evaluate potential impacts to ensure that flood protection measures will themselves not create new adverse impacts on or off site. Your staff and peer review experts have determined that there was more than enough studies and evidence over the last 20 years to provide a reasonable basis for concluding that stormwater collection and treatment proposed for 2800 is not just sufficient, but more than proposed for any single house in Half Moon Bay history. But there's more. First, among the thousands of pages of hydrologic documents in the record, and for Commissioner Rohrbach, there's been studies at all times of the year. The most recent studies that were requested by the Planning Commission were undertaken in coordination with your staff and represent a small amount of data and additional percolation tests that have occurred over the last 20 years in all seasons. But what's really important is that the Stolosky subdivision came after a lot of the flooding that was experienced by the lower lying properties. And so they built into the conditions of the subdivision 30-foot setbacks from the Pullman ditch, and our properties are required not to contribute to the Pullman ditch in any way, shape, or form. So that's been a guiding principle with your staff from day one, and we've successfully done that. Among the who's who of consultants that have worked on this project are WRA, NGO, Ashley, Sigma Prime, Geoforensics, Accutest, JM Weiss, and others. Next, consider that 2800 doesn't even own the Pullman ditch. While we're adjacent to it, it's owned by our neighbors. Therefore, aside from ensuring that we do not adversely impact the ditch or allow runoff into the ditch, the universe of things we can do is limited, and we've exhausted every opportunity. We provided basins, a basin for collection of stormwater runoff and natural percolation pursuant to perk tests and additional engineering and analysis that would accommodate 25 500-year and 1,000-year storm events. Imagine that, building a basin to collect stormwater that will last 900 years more and longer than the expected life of the house. That's never been done in coastal California, but we did it because we're trying to not only provide you with assurance that this house can comply with every policy in the LUP, but also can assist our neighbors with their concerns about off-site flooding that occurs to the lower lying properties. And what we're hoping here is that you'll be able to evaluate the opponent's communication to the City Council, wherein they claim to be appellants, but we're the appellants, their neighbor opponents. At page 16 of attachment 8, they request 4 prayers for relief. 1, that the city fix the flooding issues at the Pullman Ditch. 2, that the city fix erosion at Roosevelt Beach. 3, that we relocate the home 30 yards west. And 4, that the city do better management of Rocket Farms. Now, Pullman Ditch, Roosevelt Beach, and Rocket Farms have nothing to do with this appeal. and are not on our property or affected by our property in any way. The fourth, that we move the home 30 yards west, not only reflects a prior iteration of the house that one of the opponents opposed in 2020, but would only address that opponent's private desires and views with respect to the property and wouldn't facilitate clustering or protection of the coast or the flood control measures that we all seek to address. The last sentence of the opponent's letter is the absolute tell. And that is, quote, if the project is approved by the city, the appellants will pursue a right of appeal with the California Coastal Commission. Now, this is highly unusual. Normally, you don't threaten the local government with appeal before they've even had a chance to determine compliance. But be it may, that's where we're at. And I do want to comment, and I'd be remiss if I didn't say, that everyone should watch the video of the September 10th hearing. Commissioner Hernandez provided a graduate school level course on planning to the Planning Commission and the public. And what he tried to convey was that after 8 years of study, enough is enough. There will never be perfect information on this property or any property. What good conceptual planning consists of is reasonable study over many years that staff can rely on to develop conditions of approval to ensure compliance when, after conceptual approval of the project, the applicant then works with the building department for building permit issuance, and we built in all of those conditions. B5, 6, 22, 23, 24, and 25, all of those conditions of approval are meant to facilitate and provide the assurance to the Planning Commission of the very things that they claim to desire. And the quotes, I mean, there's a quote in here that's really worth revisiting from Commissioner Hernandez, where he says, this is the thing. This is a quote. This is the thing. The city council is just going to approve this. They are going to override. To which Commissioner Gorn responded, just to be clear, if we say no to this project, it gets appealed to the city council, so it's not the end of the world. Now, I do think that this video should be required viewing for all future members of the Planning Commission. At the end of the day, we've tried mightily to work closely with your staff and peer review experts to design a project in conformance with all policies and goals of the approved subdivision and the city LUP, and have proposed to do more in terms of complying with the LCP, collecting and treating our own stormwater, and otherwise achieving the long-term goals for the Pullman Ditch than any other project ever proposed or considered by the city. Facts that are readily supported by substantial evidence in the record, numerous studies, voluminous analysis, and the proposed conditions of approval for the project. We would appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Massara.
At this point, you can open the public hearing and take public comment.
Public hearing is now open. Going to a public comment. Jimmy Benjamin.
Good evening, council members. Jimmy Benjamin, 400 Pillarcitos Avenue. I did not sit on the Planning Commission during the most recent iterations of this, but I do remember the project from earlier. I sent a copy of a couple of slides to you by email. I'm sorry to the public that they weren't able to be included in the slide presentation. I thought they might be helpful for you. So the short version of what I have to say is that I have no quarrel or anger at the applicant. It's a residential property. He has a right to build a residence on the residential property, assuming that he could make it safe. I believe that the titles pertaining to flood hazard legally in our LCP don't define the policy. It's the text of the policy that matters. And the concerns that I have are erosion. That is that water, a surplus of water on the surface carries highly liquefiable soil and creates an erosion problem. That's what's happened in the Kehoe watercourse. That's what's happened in the Pullman watercourse, the Seymour watercourse, in all of our watercourses. And this property is the one that's closest to the bluff. And the closer you get to the bluff, the finer the soils, the more easily these alluvium soils that they're building on can be dislodged. So my concern, which I couldn't see in the plans, and I apologize to the applicant if it's clear and I have missed it, is how the water that comes off the parcel, whether it's rainfall that comes out of the detention basin or it's water on the surface that passes by the property on its way to the ocean, or whether it's subterranean flow that hits the dam of the foundation and is forced up, how it gets around and leaves the property in the same dissipated state that it was in before that. If it fails to, then we have an entrained flow, and that entrained flow is going to take soil. If there's a single lesson to planning in Half Moon Bay, it is that erosion is not a problem until it is. And we're trying to avoid that. That is my very small but very important bone to pick that I would like clarity on before you approve the project or deny it. Thank you.
Thank you. Move on to Joe Farrell.
Good evening, City Council members. That's better. I live at 2805 Alameda Avenue. Our house was built in 1994, and part of it is literally over the Pullman ditch. And as a 30-year resident here, we have seen this many times over. And while we don't have a beef with the applicant, we do take exception to many of the things that have been talked about. And the big thing is, it is not the drainage coming from the house. It's just, that's meaningless. And yes, they have plenty of room to be able to do that. What the issue is the water that comes down from across the street, down from the hills, is like an ice cream cone. It comes down and it funnels through all of the asphalt into Rocket Farms, and it comes out into two places. The majority of that water gets drained across the street into a pipe that makes a right-hand turn and elbows into the Pullman ditch, which at one point in time was 2 feet wide and 1 feet deep. It's now, as Jimmy has said, very much larger. The water that we're all talking about in this is, again, it is not the rainfall that comes down that Scott has talked about and that Mo has talked about. It's the water that comes down with such force, there's nowhere for it to go, and the lot where the Vidovich property is on becomes the spillway after other areas flood. And we have many, many pictures. I didn't bring them to show this time, but the Planning Commission has seen the amount of water through flows through videos, which I have shown and that are now part of the documentation, as well as a myriad of pictures. We urge that this project be denied until the ditch is fixed and finished, and that what we think is stop the flow coming onto our private property from Rocket Farms. Move it to some other way. Thank you.
Thank you. Brad Stainwit.
Honourable Mayor and Council members, I'd like to start by something that Maz said, which is that the engineers have an understanding of the soil structure. Did they in fact know that the entire area is part of a liquefaction zone as classified by the California Geological Society? That means that there is so much water in the soil that in the event of an earth tremor or an earthquake, it would turn to quicksand. Scott's map that he showed uses the eastern edge as his point that says it is not within 300 feet. If you could bring that up, thank you. The white dot there is where he's taken his measurements from, not the western edge of the property. 2800 is within 300 feet of the coastal dunes. In fact, it's 201 feet to be precise. And on that fact alone, this appeal should be denied. Mr. Massara gave a very heated argument, but he does have a habit of exaggerating and omitting details. There has been no allowance for the water that inundates 2800 during the wet season, only for the proposed new impervious surfaces. No groundwater tests have been conducted on 2800 during the wet season. If Mr. Massara states that there were numerous over many years studies, where are they during the wet season? Because the Planning Commission asked for them time and time again, and they were not forthcoming. The proposed water retention pond is sadly inadequate and will do nothing to prevent water returning to the ditch, into people's homes, or straight to the coastal path and dunes. The garages have almost the same footprint as the house, a house that no one is actually going to be living in. Situating the garages under the home, similar to all the homes on Champs-Élysées and Washington, would significantly reduce the impervious surfaces. If Mr. Massara or Mr. Vidovich had ever once knocked on our door, called us, emailed us, approached us, we could have suggested this, but he has not. Okay. I'd like to remind the city that the Coastal Commission elected not to hear the appeal that would have overturned the decision that allowed the Stolovsky-Gonzalez subdivision. So there is no guarantee that they would hear an appeal on this one. Lastly, from the Seismic Hazard Zone report, which is part of the San Mateo County, California 2021, city, county, and state agencies are directed to use the seismic hazard zone maps in their land
Mr.
use
Stanway,
planning
can you please conclude your statement?
and permitting processes. They must withhold development permits for a site within a zone until the geologic and soil conditions of the project site are investigated and appropriate mitigation measures are incorporated into development plans. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a car here with the name John Hernandez, maybe? Yes, John Hernandez. Thank you.
Hello, thank you, Mayor and Council. I came just to oppose the project, and I would think that you'd try to repair the problem, which is the flooding, and why add a home to the problem when you might have to use some of the property to correct your problem. So, again, I'm just opposed to it right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary Rudy?
Good evening. I'm here to say that I am not a scientist. I don't know about hydrology, but I'm a bit of an amateur historian. And so I do know a little bit about what has happened here on our bluff tops, on our marine terraces, on our beautiful Santa Cruz Mountains behind us. And that is that water collects and water goes down, and it goes downhill, and it finds its easiest way to the ocean. And as has been suggested earlier, with the advent of mankind beginning to fence, to farm, to ranch, to have cattle, things began to channel and to force water that would have normally been absorbed in marine terraces. This is actually where we're looking, where in fact all our homes are. It's a floodplain. And if we were to dig a hole right now, straight down through this floor, we would hit a marine terrace made up mostly of an ancient seafloor, raised by millennia of earthquakes. All of our terraces are ancient seafloors, so you have compacted organic materials and sand, very absorbent of water. But we've disrupted that over time. We didn't know better. When the Pullman Ditch was created back in the first decade of the 20th century, nobody knew. It was a farmer who said, hey, I want to create a better way to get rid of this water off my ranch. And, you know, the only thing going by was the Ocean Shore Railroad. There weren't any people to complain. There was nowhere to go get a permit. What was a permit? So, you know, people took matters in their own hand. But we can't do that anymore. We live in a community. We live near and next to and in support of each other. So tonight I'm here to support my neighbors. I forgot to say I live at 315 Roosevelt, one street over from Washington. I'm on the other side of Champs-Élysées. And I want to support my neighbors, and I want us to finally do something about this man-made ditch. It's not natural. Let's fix it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next one is Andrew Abel.
Good evening, everyone. So my name is Anju Abel. I live in 2801 Champs-Élysées, which is right across from 2800 Champs-Élysées. I moved here 4 years ago from Manhattan, New York City. And since I've lived there, I witnessed my neighbor John Rossi and my neighbors Joe Farrell and Carol, their homes flooded. I've seen John Rossi stand in a knee-deep water in the middle of the night, calling for fire trucks to help him with the water flooding that's coming from the creek. I'm seeing the bluffs erode. This proposed house, the end of the property is 201 feet away. I also see that our homes in our community do not have security screens or iron gate blocking us from seeing each other. What are they hiding? We're a community. I love my community. We have parties in our cul-de-sac. We welcome each other. My request to this council is, let's fix this ditch. Let's stop this flooding. The proposed home is 201 feet from the bluffs. The end of the plot is at Naples, 201 feet. So it is not in compliance with land use plan. Please, no iron gates or screens preventing us. Like, what do they need this privacy from? The water table should be tested in a wet season, not in a dry season. I love my neighborhood. I love everybody who live here. We live together as a community. Let's not begin now. It's already been flooding. Let's not create a bigger problem for existing homes. Let them be safe. We should not lose our coastline. We should prevent them. We should safeguard it. And let's not make each other uncomfortable by putting security screens. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any public comment?
We have no online speakers.
Council members.
I've said this before and I'll say it again. Our planning commission is composed of people that we've appointed because we respect their knowledge of land use and residential requirements and flood prevention. And unless there's an extraordinary reason to doubt their decisions, because from my opinion, they're the experts, we shouldn't disregard what they had to say. And the vote was that this project would contribute to flooding and should not be approved. And from what I've understood, and I'm not an expert in hydrology, but my reading of the staff report and the appellant and arguments mean to me that this house would contribute to the flooding. And as has been pointed out, the real problem is a much bigger problem, but that's not our decision tonight. So I will vote to affirm the denial of the project that the Planning Commission has made.
Councilmember.
First of all, I want to thank the applicant's agent, the residents in the vicinity of the project for being forthcoming with me about, their issues and concerns and what they'd like to see. Honestly, I was against the creation of this PUD in the first place. I've been against allowing people to build over water channels. Should never have happened. We've just had some very bad planning in this community for many, many years. I do agree that we need to do some source control. I think ultimately that's the major way that we're going to deal with this, is to work on capturing the water east of Highway 1. And there are many grants available from the Water Board, State Coastal Conservancy, to develop bypasses, detention basins, all that sort of thing. So it doesn't necessarily have to be done with an assessment district. There are grants for this. Proposition 4 is on the ballot in November that would create a $10 billion pot for climate resilience, stormwater improvements, et cetera, et cetera. And I think we need to pursue that. Overall, I agree with Harvey. I think we need to be more aggressive in evaluating and doing sound planning for our stormwater issues. That said, it's really hard to do anything to achieve certainty because we're in new territory here with climate change and atmospheric rivers, the frequency of storms, the intensity of storms. We're kind of learning as we go. There is no certainty. We can only do the best we can with the information we have and the data that's been produced all around by staff and applicants, et cetera. I will say, so I worked for the Coastal Conservancy and managed grant projects to restore wetlands, which involved stormwater issues, evaluating riparian areas, looking at soil reports, geotechnical reports, and things like that. I've also been a coastal commissioner many years ago now, but evaluated projects. I used to sit on Tuesdays when they had Tuesday meetings. So I decided to dig deep, and I looked at the the wetland delineation that was provided, the peer reviews, all the studies that have been done and that were available to see. And I was concerned also about the testing done in June of -- to see the infiltration. But when you look at the soils analysis done as part of the wetland delineation, the site is composed of two different kinds of soils. One kind of soil is about 65% of the site, and then there's another kind of soil for the remaining third. The remaining third is to the west of the building pad. And the Farallon soils that are going to be underneath the main development are identified as well-draining soils. And I'm thinking what you said made sense about why they decided to test in June, because they understood the soil matrix there. The Denison, not quite as well-draining, but still moderately well-drained soils. So I kind of have some trust in the evaluations of the site and the soils and the geology. I do have one question for staff about how certain you are about the distance from the various habitats in terms of compliance with the LUP, before I proceed.
Mr. Mayor, I'd be happy to provide some clarification.
Yes, please do.
And the map I have up on screen right now, just to clarify, the buffer was drawn from the property lines and not the white pin that's shown, showing 300 feet from the property. And the other colors are superimposed from the habitat maps within our land use plan. And although they're not survey accurate, we are comfortable with the distances shown on this map in relation to the dunes habitat, as well as the inland beach edge.
So you were confident in your analysis of that?
Yes.
Okay. Somebody brought up the issue of liquefaction. I did see the most recent maps produced in 2021, and I think we're going to have to, the city's going to have to take a look at that and potentially prepare, LUP amendments to deal with it. It's a pretty serious level of mapping, and but it happened after our LUP was approved. So it's not the standard of review for tonight. So as much as I understand people's fears about flooding, I saw some information from Mr. Rossi about where his house is and the impacts that he's had, terrible. I completely understand why you would be fearful of that sort of event. But looking at how the project has developed and been mitigated, how the development has been clustered, which it's supposed to be for a planned unit development. That's what our LUP requires. So it's close to the cul-de-sac as I think it rightly should. I evaluated it for visual impacts. I don't see it. I don't see there's any impact on visual resources. Potentially for the immediate neighbors. I think that the detention basin designed to handle a 25-year flood is possibly more than adequate. The other properties on the cul-de-sac as part of the Stolowski PUD, those homes were approved with 10-year flood mitigation. So this proposal proposes a 25-year flood basin for a 2-hour rainfall duration, which seems on the face of it to be able to hold the water. My concern is with the current design of the detention basin involving earthen berms. Having some knowledge of San Francisco Bay levees and the issues they have with gophers and levee failure, I appreciate the mitigation. And if you could call up the mitigations relating to the additional hydrology work that needs to be conducted prior to permitting.
Yes, I'd be happy to read the draft condition of approval into the record. So hydrological modeling, prior to the issuance of the building permits, per the recommendations of the peer review that was conducted on the preliminary grading and utility plans, the permittee shall prepare a hydrological model showing the project will not have adverse effects on adjacent properties. If the hydrological model shows the project will have adverse effects on adjacent properties, permittee shall work with planning and engineering staff to address potential adverse drainage effects caused by the grading of the project prior to the issuance of building permits.
So I think that's appropriate, but I would suggest that condition be modified somewhat to address the specific issues raised by the Waterways Consulting peer review, so that we deal with the issues of the structure, not just the ability to hold the water, but is it adequate to not divert water in a large storm, no matter where it's diverted, whether it's to the creek or adjacent properties or whatever. I think it needs to address the peer review information in it. I want to say that I really appreciate the level of effort that the Planning Commission has put into reviewing the project over many years. I respect their questioning and respect their opinion about this, but I've come down in a slightly different place, having reviewed all the documentation and made a site visit, that I think that there's enough evidence in the record that we can be comfortable upholding this appeal with the modification slightly to the condition of approval, so that we can make sure we have the best possible defense against flooding. It'll never be perfect because we can't predict every potential situation that will occur. But has the applicant done sufficient due diligence? I think over time he has. And would I like to not have any development in this area? Of course. I love the open space. I love the views. I think we do need to deal with the Pullman Channel flooding, but by law, we cannot require an applicant to mitigate other than the impacts of his specific project. And he has done that by diverting the water, by designing appropriate acceptance of water and discharge of water, and abides by the buffers of the creeks as they are. The creeks evolve, they develop vegetation. Some of that vegetation is riparian, but based on the data we have now, I think that that it justifies upholding the appeal. And that's where I'm coming down tonight.
Yeah, the Planning Commission denied this project based on two concerns: the danger of flooding because of the large impermeable surface and the proximity to shoreline hazards. As the appeal application states, the applicant has worked with city engineering and outside consultants for a year on managing flooding. The project now includes a 25-year flood catch basin and a 30-foot easement, the south side of Pullman Ditch, for whatever flood mitigation measures the city wants to require before building permits are issued. This is significantly more investment in flood control than any other residence in Half Moon Bay. Secondly, the LUP generally prohibits development within 300 feet of the beach and coastal bluffs. But as the staff report has shown, the entire project site is more than 300 feet from coastal bluffs and the beach. So LUP policies in Chapter 7 do not apply. I am in favor of granting the appeal for these reasons.
Thank you. Thank you for the applicant, for presenting your information. I know the applicant has done a lot of work to be able to develop this site. I'm not an expert on any of this, but I see a lot of information coming to from the community, from the planning commission, who are the experts, who have acknowledged the site, as well as the neighbors. Thank you to the neighbors, for coming forward, or what have you seen in the last years in your community. I do agree with, with Councilmember Reddick and Councilmember Penrose, and also with Vice Mayor Rareback. From this information, I conclude that I deny the appeal to the applicant to develop this site.
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to let you know the applicant has requested a minute of rebuttal time. He did exceed the 10 minutes that was given to him, so we're under no obligation to provide that, but we wanted to make that known that he was requesting that.
Yes, he can have 1 minute.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. I hate to indulge you on this. I don't understand. What was your position on the appeal?
I deny the appeal.
So you're joining Councilmember Rohrbach?
Correct.
Okay. I guess first thing I wanted to do on appeal is invite the city's peer review expert, Matt Weld from Waterways, to weigh in on some of these flooding concerns. I understand he's here in attendance via Zoom tonight, and I would have expected that you would have solicited his review of all these materials. The second thing I was going to point out was that for those project opponents who urged you to, in essence, hold our property hostage until their concerns over the Pullman ditch are resolved, that is the equivalent of a constitutional takings. And so I really want to urge you to avoid that. And lastly, those concerns can easily be addressed if you're worried about the timing of the year of percolation and soils testing, because if you were to approve the project tonight, we could work with your staff to do this during this year's rainy season. I see no reason to continue to delay improvements to flooding at Pullman Ditch. That makes no sense whatsoever.
Matt, go ahead and speak.
Yeah, hello everyone. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay. I tried to lay out my concerns pretty clearly in the letter. I'll be brief. I think that the retention basin is more than adequate. I called into question in terms of its geometry and its function. There were some concerns with maintenance, such as gophers and things like that, that could be easily addressed through design tweaks moving forward. The larger potential concern that I noted is that the basin itself could be in the flow path of flood waters leaving the ditch in large events as a result of the restriction of the undersized culvert that is in the ditch. So we requested that as a condition of approval, modeling be done, hydraulic modeling, a physical model to look at conditions before and after the development to ensure that conditions on adjacent properties, downstream properties, upstream properties weren't exacerbated as a result of the proposed development. That's an easy question to answer. And it seems like a reasonable condition on the property. Given the easement that's proposed, there's lots of opportunities to mitigate any potential impacts there. So I felt like that was a reasonable mitigation to allow this thing to move forward.
Thank you.
I move to deny the appeal and affirm the Planning Commission's decision based upon the findings and evidence contained in Exhibit A of the draft resolution.
Second. Can I have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Penrose?
No.
Councilmember Reddick?
No.
Vice Mayor Rarbeck?
Yes.
And Mayor Jimenez?
Yes.
All right, that was a 2-2 vote, and perhaps you should have covered this earlier. So on a 2-2 vote, the motion fails. I will note the council has a few options. You could make another motion at this point. But I would also note that it will take 3 votes to reverse the Planning Commission. So that we've actually had this happen before a couple times this year with 4 council members on the, considering the appeal, and a 2-2 vote means that the Planning Commission decision stands. So at this point, you could, another council member could make a motion, or you could close the proceeding.
I move that we uphold the appeal and amend the condition for hydrological work to incorporate comments from the peer review by Waterways Consulting.
I'll second.
Roll call.
Councilmember Penrose?
Yes.
Councilmember Reddick?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Rarbeck?
No.
Mayor Jimenez?
No.
All right, motion fails. At this point, I would suggest that you have deadlocked, and there will be, probably no point in making further motions unless someone disagrees, and the appeal is effectively denied.
Thank you. The hearing is closed. We're going to go for a break. Come back at 9:20. Welcome back. Move on to resolutions and staff reports.
I know, resolutions. Okay. Good evening, Honorable Council. I'm Helen Walter, the Senior Management Analyst for the city.
Hello again, Maz Bozerguinia, Public Works Director and City Engineer. You're going to be seeing a lot of me tonight for the rest of the evening.
Tonight I am presenting an update on the Muni electrification project effort. I will quickly review what has happened previously, go over staff's recommendation, offer the council the 3 options going forward, and then potential next steps. Background, just to review, adding solar PV has been a council priority since 2019. You guys worked with the Cabrillo Unified School District as well. That didn't work out. Then when the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan, Phase 1, was approved in 2023, it was incorporated as a goal for the city to move forward with under 3 different policies. Our goal, one of the primary ones, is to electrify all municipal facilities by 2025. just to go over the previous background, the timeline that we've gone through before. At the February 2024 council meeting, council approved staff's recommendation to work with Willdan Energy Services on a comprehensive electrification program on all city facilities. Then at the May 24 council meeting, council voted to move forward with phase 1 of the energy service contract project. And this was allowed under California Government Code 4217.12, and it was at an estimated cost of $1.35 million for the comprehensive project. In September, staff was notified of a new cost estimate from Willdan in which the expected costs had risen to $2.325 million, an increase almost of $1 million. As the city owns the NIM is Net Energy Metering, NIM 2.0 agreement with PG&E, it's a much more beneficial agreement, cost-effective agreement than the new Net Energy Metering 3.0 systems. And the solar is the backbone for the entire electrification project within the city. Staff reached out to Peninsula Clean Energy to see if they had any contractors that we could potentially switch to. And they were informed that the PPA was also still a possibility. If we have any questions tonight, Peter Levitt is here from Peninsula Clean Energy. Peninsula Clean Energy is a public agency that serves San Mateo County and what's the other name of the town? Los Banos, thank you, with clean energy sources. And they have done so for the city for the past 8 years. So tonight, our options, I will, quickly, we have 3 options before us tonight for you to consider. You can enter into the new proposed power purchase agreement with Peninsula Clean Energy for the solar array systems at the 2 city facilities that we've always been planning on. The EOC, Emergency Operations Center, and the City Hall. We can continue with Willdan Energy Services under the Energy Services Contract Project Agreement with a modification to scope, or work with a different contractor that would independently construct the 2 planned solar arrays. So I'll go through the 3 options. Option number 1, and I'll just, option number 1, excuse me. The benefits to the city and our tight financials are there are no upfront construction costs to the city for the installation of the PV solar systems. Then prices are fixed for a 20-year term of the PPA. It is expected to provide cost savings over the 20 years. The first 3 years, there'll be a slight increase in electrical cost, but the savings then grow over time due to the expected increases in utility costs. Over the 20 years, we are expected as a city to save $250,800, and that's over 20 years. That's what's been calculated. At each facility, there's some estimated 20-year cost savings. Option number 2, continue with Willdan with a modified scope. Willdan did provide a new project with PV solar only. We would not continue on with the comprehensive project with them. To complete the solar only with Willdan, it would cost the city an increased capital contribution from the $200,000 that we had previously budgeted to $355,000. We would need to finance the additional $1 million and the annual debt service of approximately $77,000 per year. The resulting energy cost savings, and this is an estimate based on, unknown complete financing numbers. So this is a back of the napkin, but because of the increased cost of the debt service, we would save approximately $47,000 over 20 years. Option number 3 is to work with an independent contractor to install the 2 PV systems. This is complicated because of the NIM 2 deadlines. The solar arrays must be interconnected and energized, rather the switch must be turned on by April of 2026. We would need to put out RFP bids, and it would put the installation time in jeopardy. Because of that, the city is in jeopardy of losing out on our NIM 2 rate structure that we currently have and are on target for, excuse me. Hence, staff recommends to adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a power purchase agreement with Peninsula Clean Energy.
Have any questions?
Is there any advantage to the third option?
The rates are better, right? The costs to the city are better, but under NIM 2. If we were to do it with NIM 3, it would not be beneficial.
If I may add, Helen, it's, so the NEM 2.0, under this net energy metering 2.0, there's a higher cost that you can sell this power back to PG&E. When you go to 3.0, that cost is throttled down and reduced as far as the maximum amount that you can sell that power back to PG&E. That was something that was passed through the California Public Utilities Commission. Now, there would be the benefit of having and owning the system outright if we were to do it, the third option. What that option would entail, is that the city would own and maintain all of the infrastructure. It would be ours. And rather than paying a flat fee to Peninsula Clean Energy, we would be utilizing the solar directly, but obviously there'd be that initial capital cost to install the system. So that would be the benefit of doing it that way. However, the challenge that we have, unfortunately, is the timing of it, because if we went through that process, we would be getting a design firm on board. We would be going out to public proposals, public bidding for the project. It would take us a little bit longer to get there, and there is the potential of missing out on the NEM 2.0 rates. And so, with these three options, it makes the most sense to go with option 1 from the perspective of we are getting energy savings over the life of the project. We do have the ability as well to purchase the infrastructure at a fair market value, which includes de-escalation of the equipment at year 6 or year 20. So we can still own the system and start realizing those gains earlier. But we have more flexibility with it, and because PC has already scoped this with the contractor for multiple cities within the San Mateo County, it would be much more efficient for them to implement this on our behalf at this stage.
Thank you.
Do we have any more clarifying questions?
Just a comment. You have to take public comment first, though, or if anybody wants to.
Yeah, for the comments, yes. We're doing clarifying questions on that.
No.
You have a comment?
I do, but I didn't.
Go ahead.
Are you taking public comment now?
I want to wait for that, yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. So James Benjamin, I'll fill out the card in a second. I've been doing solar since 2016. A couple of questions that you probably know the answer to that may be of interest to you. If you don't own the equipment, you're in a PPA and there's a disaster, are you on the hook for restoring the equipment? Who has responsibility for the maintenance of the equipment? The values that were shown for the cost, were those net present values based on discounted cash flows, or were they just added up and so that $1 at the end of 20 years would be worth a lot less than $1 in year one? It wasn't clear because they weren't marked in PV. Thanks.
Okay.
I can respond to the first one. Under the PPA, PC would be, Peninsula Clean Energy would be responsible for the maintenance of the system for as long as we are in the PPA. So once that fair market value valuation is determined and purchased, then at that point, it would be city owned and maintained PV system. As far as the savings, Peter, if you can speak on that, we'd really appreciate that.
Yes, gladly. And hello, everybody. My name is Peter Levitt. I am with Peninsula Clean Energy, and I am our programs manager for distributed energy projects like these. It's my pleasure to be in front of the Honorable City Council tonight. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Maz and Helen, for the time we've worked together so far. To the question on the savings, just boiling it down real quick, it is about $250,000 projected in simple savings and about $160,000 in savings, factoring in about a 3% discount rate, which we figured was a reasonable discount rate for a city to assume. Yes. I also wanted to take just a quick moment and add one comment to the presentation. Is that permissible?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. So I just wanted to explain also the construct of this program, and that's important to think about the benefits of participating with a Peninsula Clean Energy-based PPA versus independently pursuing a contract with another contractor. And the main benefit is that Peninsula Clean Energy, we've been running this type of program for a few years now. This is our second round, and we're actually just at the very end of picking another contractor and starting more projects with that contractor. So that contractor works with Peninsula Clean Energy to run a bunch of different projects all at once. And by doing so, they're able to see this as a portfolio of a much larger project, which means that we get economies of scale afforded to all of the project participants. So what you saw with Willdan's inflated cost figures are representative of the costs associated with building just one project, whereas we get to build sort of a larger portfolio and achieve economies of scale on the admin, the construction, the engineering and design services required for the project. So it's important to understand kind of the basis of why we're running this program in the first place is that small projects like the ones that we're looking to build at the police station and at City Hall can be pretty costly on an individual basis, but when you add them into a larger portfolio, that's where you get the benefits. That's all I wanted to highlight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Any clarifying questions come?
So after, what was it, around 6 years, we would own, if we went with
right.
Peninsula Clean Energy, right?
We would have the option to purchase at fair market value. We did not calculate what that cost would be at this point.
And if we decided not to purchase, we would continue our contract with PCE for maintenance, and anything happens.
Exactly.
Good.
So in 6 years, if we decide we want to buy them out with the, there'll be a fair market value cost based on the degradation of the solar panels of the 6 years.
Right. And even if we bought them out, we would still potentially be contracting with them to maintain it if we owned it, right?
We could,
So
potentially.
it would be balancing, but, okay, great, thanks.
I have another question. And this is probably for PC&E. What if we found another location and decided we wanted to do solar panels there, like Beechwood, Glen?
Can I answer that actually?
Or
Because we are locked in for NIM 2, we cannot increase or decrease by more than 10%, or we lose the NIM 2 pricing.
Okay.
So if there was another site down the road, that would be under the NIM 3 because of the deadlines that the CPUC has in place.
Okay.
We are under a grandfathered contract, an agreement, so it's being honored until April of 26. But we can't change it much.
Got it. Thank you.
Yes.
Do I have any more clarifying questions? Comment?
I have a comment.
Comment? Go ahead.
Okay. It's pretty clear to me that option one is the way to go. Peninsula Clean Energy is really a wonderful organization. Full disclosure, I'm on the board of directors. I just want to make sure that in the long run, we don't lose sight of the other green energy part of the original idea that we were going to contract with Willdan for more electrification, for EV charging stations, et cetera. So I just want to make that comment that we should not forget about it. Clearly, we would do well to have this PPA, and it's all supported. That's my comment.
Can I respond to that?
Sure.
We absolutely are not forgetting that. As part of what's happened since this project was before you, we were able to work with PCE to get additional funding to do as a grant. Some of it is a grant, and some of it is a 1% loan. And so we absolutely are working. I met today with Todd Seeley. We are looking at how much these HVACs will cost. So we'll be doing it internally. We've got a grant of $155,000, and then we've got a loan at 1% that I would need to bring back to you for your approval of $600,000 with a 25% match to continue on and to get the HVACs and to get the water heater actually has already been replaced here. The panels are being upgraded. The solar EV, not the solar, excuse me, the EV charger. I haven't put it out to bid yet, so we don't quite know the pricing that we're dealing with. So we don't have a full project yet, but we definitely have money lined up, and we are working on it.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Great. I move that we authorize the city manager to execute a power purchase agreement for the solar photovoltaic system at the Emergency Operations Center parking lot and the City Hall parking lot in partnership with Peninsula Clean Energy Authority.
Second, PC was my first choice anyway, so, yeah.
Can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Brownstone,
Yes.
Councilmember Penrose,
Yes.
Councilmember Reddick,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Rarback,
Yes.
and Mayor Jimenez.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're on to item 3B.
Thank you, Peter.
As you might notice, we're going with a theme tonight. It's Moz doing every presentation.
I wasn't joking. I'll be here for the next one, too. All right. Thank you all. Moss, Virginia, Public Works Director, City Engineer. I'm happy to be here tonight to present the Sewer Authority Mid-Coast Side proposed 5-year infrastructure plan, or capital improvement plan, as a lot of folks call it. Sorry, let me start the presentation. Is that coming out through? Perfect. So the request tonight is going to be by motion to accept the Sewer Authority Mid-Coast Side 5-year infrastructure plan or capital improvement program. We have our SAM General Manager, Kishan Pravati, online as well. He's joining us on Zoom to provide any questions and to respond to any questions and feedback. So thank you, Kishan, for being available tonight. Just a little bit of background for folks at home and others that may be watching this at some point in the future. The Sewer Authority Mid-Coast side provides sewer treatment to the city of Half Moon Bay, as well as Granada Community Services District and Montero Water and Sanitation District. These services are provided under a Joint Powers Authority Agreement, which is comprised of those three member agencies that I mentioned. Just a little bit of background on the plant itself. It averages a daily dry weather flow of approximately 4 million gallons per day. And overall, the costs of operations and maintenance are based on the flows to the plant from the previous calendar year, which does tend to vary to a certain extent from year to year. The city of Half Moon Bay's current rate is 60.82% of those flows. As part of the adopted fiscal year 24-25 SAM budget, the overall adopted budget was a little over $9.3 million. And historically, the SAM budget for operations and maintenance has incorporated that infrastructure component or the capital component that we have the 5-year plan for tonight. For the adopted 24-25 budget, it was specifically for one capital project, which was the replacement of the Montero Force Main. Of that $9.3 million, the city's share of that SAM budget was a little over $5.6 million, again, based on the flows percentage to the plant, which also included a little over $1.8 million towards those infrastructure expenses. Tonight, as part of the staff report and as part of the packet, we have the proposed 5-year plan from SAM. This is a planning document to look at the projects that are on the horizon over the next 5 years for SAM. And really the areas that this plan was to incorporate was to help respond to those regulatory and safety concerns that have been a topic of conversation at the board meetings, as well as maintaining and replacing the existing and aging systems and assets of SAM. Also to protect the public health and environment, as well as the SAM staff themselves, and as well as looking at embracing a more sustainable policy as far as managing some of these infrastructure improvements. The CIP was organized projects were organized into 3 priority levels, essentially from highest priority from a highest priority to a least critical priority. This was originally presented to the SAM board on August 12, 2024. At that meeting, there was a request that this be brought back to each of the member agencies for input prior to it going back to the SAM board for approval. There was a modification from what was presented in the August 12th meeting at the board meeting to the CIP document that's in our staff report tonight. It was updated in early September, and that was to incorporate additional information on each of the projects as requested by our council member Ruddick and others at the board meeting that evening. Overall, the estimated total of this 5-year program is $18 million, is over $18.5 million over that 5-year term. I mentioned a little bit as far as the project prioritization, just high level, the category 1 that's identified in the document is really regarding regulatory and safety type of projects. So these are projects that are required to ensure that full regulatory compliance, as well as health and safety of the staff and the community at large. There's really not much wiggle room with those category 1s. There's only one funded project that's listed under this category on the 5-year CIP, which is the Montero Force Main. There's also another one with respect to the electrical room and some of the other improvements, but it's not part of, although it's part of the document itself, it's not part of the calculation because there is the hope that there's FEMA funding and other recovery funds that will be available for that. So it is identified as a project, although it's not part of that $18 million calculation that's there. The category 2 is really looking at replacement and rehab of aging infrastructure. So looking ahead at areas to address projects and problem spots before it gets to a place where it becomes a regulatory issue or a safety hazard. And then the category 3, which is the lower priority, is our projects that would help with sustainable efforts, optimization of energy use, and operational optimization. And again, these would be things that would be wonderful to do, but if it's if there's a financial constraint, these would be on the lower end of the priority. So what we have, I made a little bit of modification. I recognize in the document that was presented and updated, the categories were not listed in the table on table 2. So I've made that modification for the PowerPoint tonight, and I'll pass that over to Sam. It was just a minor typo on the categories. So again, you can see. They've broken it up into different facilities. So there's pump stations, force mains, the treatment plant, and the outfall. Those are the 4 main categories that they really look at. And on table 2, you can see each project listed out and how those dollars are estimated based in thousands of dollars. And those are those are incorporated. Those dollars are correlated to the year that it's being proposed to be done. So they add escalation for the cost of those projects. Everything's estimated in 2024 dollars. And then for each year, there's a 4% escalation that they add to it. And so when you look at the project in year 24-25 versus 25-26, that's been increased. So the estimates, again, are based on current, and then they're escalated up depending on the year that it's being proposed in the CIP document to be implemented. And then the table 1 on the right is, again, it's another way of showing the same information and values. It's just more by the system component, and then again, broken out towards the potential fiscal year that those projects would be implemented. There's 2 line items that total up at the bottom. There's an estimated total. That's based off the construction estimates for the projects that have been prepared. And then there's a target total of $13.5 million. That target total was something that was established early on in the process through discussions with SAM staff, really as a way of trying to target a feasible infrastructure request annually. What this shows obviously is that the needs are greater than what the hope was as far as what they wanted to ask us. The reality is going to be that there's more need and there's going to be more costs associated with that. The one category 1 project that's listed that is one of the biggest, the largest cost items is an IPS capital related project. It's the Montero Force Main. That's estimated at $10.2 million over the course of the next 3 or 4 fiscal years. And just as a reminder for our council and staff and the public, generally, the responsibility and cost of the IPS-related infrastructure, specifically the Montero Force Main, has been a point of contention amongst the SAM member agencies, and has been the subject of pending litigation. And there is a trial currently scheduled for July year 2025. And so we will be coming back to provide more input at that time in a future meeting to discuss that in more detail. But it would be remiss of me not to mention that this is something that is part of this capital program and something that is a contentious item within the document itself. Now, again, the acceptance of this plan doesn't actually allocate any funding towards the capital program at all at this stage. But obviously, it's a good indicator of what the requests are going to be. So when we get the request for the 25-26 operations and maintenance budget, that number that we saw is likely going to be in the request for that budget. And so, although tonight it's not being requested, it will be something that will be brought up in a future budget cycle. And something that we didn't mention, but I'll mention it just verbally here is, and we've talked about this as when we passed the last operations and maintenance budget. We did just finish the last year of our rate study increase for our sewer rates, We are looking at our fund balance with our finance team, and there is a likelihood that we're going to do another assessment and consider what these, especially with these new costs that are coming through with respect to the infrastructure, it's likely that we'll need additional increases to our rate structures moving forward. And I think this can also be said for the other two member agencies. Obviously, these costs are something that, if it's something that's going to be required to be paid by the member agencies, that will be something that may require additional fees in the form of rate structure increases. But also, it's been mentioned in the capital program, in the SAM's 5-year CIP, and in other conversations, we also do want to look at other funding sources. There's some funding sources potentially for some of the infrastructure upgrades and electrical upgrades that are required at SAM. So there's a potential for funding there. And I think looking at other funding sources and grant programs is going to be critical for all of us on the coast, not just the city of Half Moon Bay, but also the folks in El Granada and Montera. Because otherwise, the ratepayers are the only other feasible method of funding a lot of these improvements moving forward. So again, the recommendation tonight would be by motion to accept the Sewer Authority Mid-Coast Side 5-year infrastructure plan or capital improvement program. And that'll be something that'll be brought back. And I'm happy to answer any questions, and the SAM General Manager Kishin is also available if there's any questions for him. That's the end of my presentation.
Well done, Maz.
Do we have any clarifying questions? No? We have to make a motion?
I move that we...
Hold on.
Oh,
comment?
sorry.
So the target, the 13 million, is what the member agencies, including our own, Half Moon Bay, felt that we could afford in the sense of not having too big a burden on the ratepayers in any given time period, right? So with the additional $5 million, that definitely raises the specter of having to raise rates because the target was based on reasonable rates. The reality is going to require adjustment. And it also, to me, points to the problems with handling these sorts of improvements and planning for the future via a joint powers authority, as opposed to a special district that can finance, these sorts of improvements over time, offer lifeline rates, and that sort of thing. So I think Maz did a really wonderful presentation. It's mainly here for you to see, I think, the big picture and where we stand in it and what's to come. So by motion, I would say let's accept the plan and move forward.
I'll second that.
Roll call.
Councilmember Brownstone?
Yes.
Councilmember Penrose?
Yes.
Councilmember Reddick?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Rohrbeck?
Yes.
And Mayor Jimenez?
Yes.
Motion carries.
It's interesting to me that the largest cost are the pipelines.
Surprising, no.
Move on to item 3C.
Go ahead, Maz. You're on a roll right now.
might as well.
I'll just go. You go. Council members, Mayor, council members, several months ago, the mayor had asked for staff to do some research and evaluate the Beechwood and Glen Cree property as part of a discussion for future items. So this is the future item. The idea behind that was, I think we can all agree, a noble one, which was, can we identify a site for a community park? And obviously this property is owned, controlled by the city, and is one of few parcels that is owned and controlled and of adequate size, at least in overall area, for a reasonable community park, and also reasonably accessible and not in necessarily a floodplain or other hazard zones. Unfortunately, when this was proposed, staff sort of had a general sense that this was going to be a tough one to go with because we had already been through a lot of the materials, a lot of the information in the land use plan. A lot of this had been discussed, but before various council members had even come on, some of the different land use plans, the Parks Master Plan, all of the things kind of out there. So this was good for all of us. I, for the first time in my time here, read the actual final district court litigation lawsuit in which the judgment was issued, and I'd never actually pulled that out and found it in the files and looked at it, and it was very informational, shall we say. The bottom line, and what we've conveyed in the staff report, is that there are a lot of constraints, natural constraints, that will limit what can be done on that site, just from the perspectives of just wetlands, potential wetlands, buffers, and things of that nature. The land use policies that have been put in place now with the 2020 plan also significantly reduce and limit what can be done there. And this was acknowledged sort of through that process. Now Moz, and I'll pass it off to Moz, has been looking at this from the context of how could we use this site to improve potentially the Kehoe drainage basin, and I'll sort of pass it off.
Thanks, John. Yes, happy to be here again. Mr. Mayor and members of the council, for the purposes of our the city's capital improvement program, we had identified these properties as potential for watershed management type of projects. And so we obviously, with Beechwood and Glen Cree being in such close proximity to Pilarcitos and Kehoe Watercourse, we have a project on the books that would look at a feasibility analysis and long-term planning for upland retention of stormwater, wetland restoration, and there is a potential use that's a more passive use, but we could look at also boardwalk trails to kind of activate a nature trail around some of these properties. But really the benefit of the utilization of these properties is to look at restoring it back to being a floodplain management parcel that it was once upon a time. And so that was adopted as part of the capital improvement program. It's been one of the projects that have been, that we have wanted to move forward, and I think we're at a point that we're going to start putting pen to paper and get that project really running off the ground. I think there's a lot of potential as well long-term for funding, for grant funding sources for projects of this nature, and so that's something that we really want to look for. The Coastal Conservancy is always a great resource for projects like this, but there's other grants available out there as well. So that would be our long-term recommendation as far as what we can utilize these properties for.
The boardwalk educational trail portion of this has nothing to do with the water retention and it's a separate project entirely.
It would be, yeah, I think on the face of it, the main project would be to utilize this as a watershed management project.
Right.
And then, but as far as additional uses, that is the one identified that we could consider as part of a long-term project.
Yeah, it seems to me that that's probably low on the list of community park ideas. So, I mean, not that it's a totally bad idea, but let's get a community garden going. Let's get a community passive park going.
I just wanted to add a little bit of context. So when I was mayor a couple of years ago, I was one of the people working on this watershed project approach for that area. And, we looked at where we might include recreational activities, and it's basically around the perimeters. like a park course or, boardwalk trail or something like that, where the elevations are a little bit higher and not subject to flooding and that sort of thing. But, most of that property is, wet, got problems. It's at the bottom of a hill, right? Water runs downhill. But we could, where there might not be funding for a boardwalk or trail on its own, if you marry the stormwater elements with a recreational component, because state agencies like to see you providing public access, right? So, focusing on the stormwater, but including a recreational component, an access component, significantly raises our ability to position ourselves better for grant funding. But we have to sort of marry the two in order to be successful at that. So I totally, appreciate bringing this idea forward and having a discussion about it, but there's been some sort of, exhaustive look at what we can and can't do out there already, so.
If we don't have any more clarifying questions, I actually have a public speaker. I do.
So Maz, you're hitting it out of the park tonight. Great, appreciate you. Thank you, John, and for your forbearance. Members of the City Council, I'm still Jimmy Benjamin. I gave you some slides. If you can pull them up, it would be helpful, but if you can't, I'll just, okay, so I'll elide it for you. John was looking through and read that district court judgment. I did a lot of PRA work myself earlier this year, so I got to spend some quality time in City Hall. And I saw a lot of documents. My favorite document is one that I actually copied for you on my first slide. It's a letter dated August 1997 to Bud Carney, who was the planning director, from William Crowell, who was the developer of Beechwood. And he writes, "Dear Bud, pursuant to our meeting today, I made a search of records and I did not find the Coastal Commission had a hearing on our tentative map. What we do have is a Coastal Commission permit for grading." I enclosed it, and he's got a picture of the grading that they moved over. That document is huge, and you need to understand what it says, okay? It says that the vesting tentative map that was the basis of perfecting the entitlements that Judge Vaughn ruled the city had violated in the takings case, that those improvements were based on an unpermitted project. They were based on a project that did not have a coastal development permit. Now, I'm not an attorney, but I can't help being astonished at why Myers-Nave did not persuade the city council to say, "Your Honor, they never perfected their vesting tentative map because the project they did was not permitted." And in fact, the encroachment permit that describes what they did specifically says that they replaced the storm drain. The storm drain in that area was a swale, by the way. Between Terrace Avenue and Grandview. That area would be holding water and be a pretty nice wetland. Except now all of that water is pouring into a subsurface drain that I showed Maz today and that I've shown former Mayor Ruddick, and any of you are welcome to have a look if you'd like to. It goes racing at high speed into the Kehoe watercourse, a watercourse that itself did not have a coastal development permit, and it is destroying my property. That is not an overstatement. It is literally destroying my property. And I need your help getting over it. So what I offered you in short was a picture of the watershed in that area and how the flows in that area have been interrupted. Most of the flows in the upper Beechwood used to flow above Grandview and come out over towards Frenchman's Creek. And now they all come down into Kehoe. So there's been a factor of 40 or 50 in the amount of water that's coming into that little creek. And if it wasn't just too much water, there's also that new channel from Highway 1 that was grafted onto the head of the creek. So it is, if you'll pardon me for saying so, it was a crap show that happened. And it's not permitted. What we need to do is take advantage of that area's ability to be the sponge that it was. It can hold water in the winter and slowly ooze out water, not just down on the terrace on city land and Landstra and maybe some others, but also the land above on the east side of terrace. These are great opportunities, and you have similar opportunities perhaps in other watersheds, like Pullman, I don't know. I'm happy to discuss and work with you on any of these, but your priorities for planning for that parcel need to start with protecting us. You know, I'm not asking you for a new entitlement. I'm asking you not to destroy an entitlement that I have. So I hope I'm being clear that I don't oppose parks. I like parks. And trails are okay, although boardwalk elevations are good. You have to kind of pay attention and say, where would they be? And the existing amount of wetlands and other issues on that parcel are not defined just by where they are today, because our local coastal program has a policy that says we don't deny protections to issues that were destroyed or degraded by illegal activity. And the word from my geomorphologist is almost all of that parcel, almost all of those parcels were wetlands. So we have to be really careful about planning through that. And I just wanted that, none of that showed up in the initial consideration. It's not because it was being suppressed. Quite the contrary. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you about it tonight. If you'd like more information, I will talk your ear off, because that is what I do. Thank you.
Thank you.
I will say this, when we were out doing a field trip there a couple of years ago with, just before Senator Becker came out and took a look at it, there were millions of ticks. If you want to see like ticks, go to Beechwood. It's covered in ticks, millions of ticks. It's awful.
So not a good location for a dog park, is that what you're saying?
No.
Any more comments?
Yeah, I have a few comments. I really admire your idea of having a community park. I think we could very well use a community park. I don't think Beechwood is the location for a community park. I think that the new project at Smith Field is clearly a place where we could have a community park. I'm hoping someday Podesta property, because its central location and its lack of environmental constraints, would be another good place. If perhaps the Landstra property could have some trails and some educational parts that would make sense, that would be another place. I wouldn't call it a community park. I'd call it an environmental education center. So while I really appreciate the idea of a community park, I don't think Beechwood is the place to put it for many reasons.
Any more comments? No. Well, thank you for for bringing this to our meeting. And actually, even though we're not able to use it as an active park, that's something I was thinking about. Maybe a volleyball court, basketball court, something, activities, exercise place for the community, being pretty much, reachable by all across Half Moon Bay and right off the highway. But I like the idea of being a passive, about the passive use, the educational piece, the trails, the walking trails, even, ticks are everywhere. So that's not, something that we are, that you're right, we are, by using it like to retain the water. I like that idea as well. Actually, when I first thought about this idea, I went to jail. and then she referred me to you, Moss, about, the use for this property. And she gave the opportunity, what it could be used for, and that part of that, it was, the coastal trails, not the coastal trail, the trails, around the property, 36 acres, right? I think, being for education, exercise, walking, especially for the neighboring communities, Terrace, Grandview, be perfect. So there's one of the recommendations that you have is actually to have conduct a study session with, with the community about the idea of having this site used other than just to graze the goats. I have nothing against goats. That's where ticks come from. But I would like to have a potential study session with the community to hear about the uses, for education and trails.
I always like the idea of parks. If we're going to do a study, prefer not just to include this possible location, but what are 3 or 4 other good locations for parks? That would make sense, because I just have this real resistance to putting parks in flood zones. I mean, I had reservations about Carter Park. Then all of a sudden there was millions of dollars to do it, and that carried the day. But I just have a lot of reservations about that, because everything points to more and more severe storm activity, all projections, and we got to prepare for that. And I like Mr. Benjamin's image of maybe we really need some more giant sponges around to absorb all this extra water. Because it won't just be a threat to his property over time with these huge storms coming in. It's going to be worse. You cannot predict where water is going to go with these huge historical storms that, instead of happening once every 50 years, are happening at least once every 5 years. So what's our long-term planning for it? And, if beach, we just need to make some decisions. If Beechwood is the place for that giant sponge, great. And the public understands it. They get the image of it because you've got water coming in. It's not, I like proposals that can be easily understood and make sense. So, like I said, I like the idea of parks, but I don't want to, force a square peg in a round hole if it's not going to make sense over time. But I would love to see some more studies, because we're looking at other, potential proposals of communities being built here by nonprofits, and that would be a great place to include a park, because you're making a whole plan, and it's not in a flood zone, and we can visualize that. So that's where my thinking is right now on that. And you don't want to have kids around a place that's infested with ticks unless there's a way to spray the heck, I don't know how preventative that is. Ticks are pretty hardy creatures. So,
You have to bring in the possums.
Yeah, you got to
Instead of grazing goats, possums.
Yeah, but anyway.
Actually, if you go on the coastal trail,
Dog sponges.
Sounding like a Hitchcock movie now, so maybe we could.
They're eating the dogs.
All right, but anyway, that's my thinking on it.
well, if you go on the coastal trail that I ride on my bike, I walk, and I ride my horse, there's sticks in that area too. There's boardwalks in that area too. So it's just an idea about using a property, that belongs to the city, that could be educational for the community, especially, for, for students. Something to learn about watersheds, water retention. An idea of doing that, it's very interesting. So that was, not able to be an active park, but an educational park. It would be something that our school district could use.
I would recommend that we make progress on the whole stormwater vision for Beechwood. And then when we have that, we can bring that forward, for public meetings, But, we do have a Parks and Rec master plan. We're trying to get Magnolia going. That's not happening very fast. We have to finish Carter Park. I think if we just wait a little bit until we flesh out the stormwater vision for Beechwood, and then we get community input on potential public access component for that project.
I completely concur.
All right. We done now?
I believe we are. So do we need anything from us? Just leave it at that?
I think we have general direction and know where we need to go as staff, which is the course we were on, but with that mindset of how can recreation be incorporated at some point, passive recreation be incorporated at some point. So I think we're good to go. Thank you.
Thank you. Any commission reports? No. City council reports? No. Just kidding. Any reports from council members? No. Possible agenda items for the future meetings? No. All right. Meeting adjourned. Thank you much.
Earlier than I thought.
Yeah. When you said the ticks, because I was out there with him today. Now I'm all itchy.